If it's Tuesday, it must be Radio Tipping Point. My name is Mike Boyle, and I have a special guest today. His name is Alexandre Lemille, and he is a circular economy aficionado, similar to me, but he has a specialty in concentrating on humanity. And I felt that was extremely insightful because very often we concentrate on a bunch of different things, but we tend to forget the human being. So I was very happy that Alexandre accepted my invitation to join today. Alexandre, thank you very much for being on board. Perhaps if you can tell our audience who you are and perhaps maybe how you started with this journey.
Hi, good morning, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me today. How I started my journey was about, I'm looking at the date, 10 years ago, around 2010, when the Ellen MacArthur Foundation started its activity and brought circular economy visible to the rest of the world. And I was at Cisco Systems at the time, we were engaging with Dame Ellen MacArthur because Cisco was financing the foundation at the beginning, and that was a very insightful discussion we had. I asked the question to Dame Ellen MacArthur, in your view, what's the positive or negative impact of circular economy on poverty? And to me, it would have been very positive. And she said, well, Alexa, I don't know. We haven't had time to look at that. And I'm like, okay, there is something here, because if you create an economy based on highly flexible services instead of a product-based economy where you have to have the purchasing capacity to buy the product, then all of a sudden you can integrate a lot more people into your economy, and that's how I started.
Interesting. And I tend to think that perhaps going back to the conversation you just alluded to, that might have had an effect on their definition of the circular economy. It was another project I was working on and trying to come up with what I consider an adequate definition of the subject. And they talk about social capital and the like. And so I thought that was quite interesting, very insightful. And now, after hearing your story, I wonder if maybe you might have influenced some of that in some fashion.
Well, I know they have been in contact to discuss what could be the social dimension, or what could be the impact of circular economy on these social dimension, which I don't see, because so far, I haven't seen so far, but it's getting there more and more. And I agree that there are more and more topics around what could be an inclusive circular economy. But to me, inclusive is not even good enough, because it's also about deep adaptation to the world, the changing world. The world is changing. It's not like you're setting up circular economy after the Second World War, but you're setting up the circular economy in 2020 with 7.6 billion people on the planet, moving to the numbers were just revised lately. I don't have the latest in mind, but moving at least to 9 billion. And what does it mean? I mean, how do we do with such abundance? To me, the answer of an economy of where you need to do more with less, the equation behind that is, where is abundance? How can we reinvent abundance so that we can do more with less, but in a crowded planet? And I'm not saying the planet is overpopulated, like many are saying. I'm saying, like we discussed before, I see humans as valued beings, so we need to value them. We need to. Circular economy is telling you that you need to care for everything, like material things and nature. But if you add the dimension of human social value, social capital. I mean, social capital is still very capitalistic, but preserving nature by deep adaptation of humans to nature. as being part of I don't like using the word nature. I use often the word ecosystem because we are part of the ecosystem. Nature is splitting humans from nature, which is a wrong concept, often a Western concept. So if you value everything and everyone, then you make people dream about the next economic model. Obviously, if you add the humans into the equation, it's getting more complex because humans are a complex element. But and obviously, you move into more like a model of life instead of just an economic model. I'm aware of that, but we shouldn't make the same mistakes we've made in the past. We need to, if we have to redesign everything from scratch, if we have to start from a blank page again, let's make it equitable, inclusive, highly adaptable, and adaptive human beings. Evolutive, we need to understand evolution. We need to understand how are we going to evolve as a species among other species in a climate challenge planet. The planet is fine. The humans are not fine. They have to preserve the link with life. And the link with life is between biodiversity and humans. It's not in the material sphere. So to me, we talk a lot about circular economy as being how to preserve and how to redesign the next computer in a model where we are still consumers and users. But I don't want to be consumer and user again. I'm fed up with my ad-based free services. All day long, I'm hit by ads that I don't want to listen to. I try to mute them. I try to not watch the screen because I know that my subconscious will work in the future to buy the stuff they want me to buy. So I don't want that anymore. I don't want that for my children. I don't want that for the rest of my life. I want to be appreciated as a full being with values, and this means an ecosystemic model of life. It doesn't mean just an ecosystem, a new economic model. Economic model puts us again in a bubble where we are stuck within that bubble. What's interesting with circular economy is that we follow natural cycles, and this is we don't say it enough. We talk about just the technical sphere, the how do we will reinvent the next computer, mobile phone based on modules, based on adaptive component, evolutive modules, and this is service-based economy. This is very good. This is very interesting. But if you are missing the bigger picture, and if we don't talk enough about the biological nutriment sphere, we are missing the point, because this is where the next innovation will be. It's going to be a bio-based model, whatever you call it, bioeconomy, or everything will be biological unless we are not seeking to preserve conditions conducive to life to human species, including other species. So to me, if you don't include the humans as part of the equation, we will never overcome and succeed in the issue of consumption rebound, i.e., if I don't have to buy the car to move from point A to point B, I have some spare money on my bank account, which I will spend to go to Roma or Vienna, visit you, Michael, over the weekend. So I will overconsume again, because the more efficient the economy, the more the risk of overconsumption, what we call the consumption rebound. Now, if you include the humans into the equation, they will see themselves as part of the solution and hopefully change their mindsets. And that's what I call we are empathy, and we have an abundance of empathy. We just need to not to lose it, because we are very empathetic human beings when we are young, but we tend to forget it as we grow older. So that's the whole point. If you focus on abundance, and abundance in 2020 is in a preserved biodiversity that we need to rebuild. I don't like the word rebuild because it's very mechanical, but we need to rejuvenate, we need to regenerate. And the next phase of the abundance, where when I look at planet Earth, is in a populated human species. And if we change that perspective of this is an overcrowded planet, this is negative, we're never going to make it, into how about looking at humans as being part of the answer? And when I look at humans, I see an abundance of energy. Okay, as simple as that. I mean, in a repair-based economy, there's plenty of humans to help us fix stuff, avoid using fossil fuel energy by using human energy, which is available at atmospheric temperature, and it's available, it's there. But it's not available from a utilitarian perspective as we used to think about. It's available locally to preserve the local ecosystem on a semi-voluntary based. It's a benevolent activity where everybody will have a part to play in rebuilding the local ecosystem, the local communities, the local economies, where we will go to our neighbor or to our professional services nearby to get things fixed in a collaborative way, understanding what's the energy available. And if the human energy is not available or is not good enough, we move to the renewable energy that we use, or the last resort would be the fossil fuel energy. But if we can avoid that, the same way we can avoid recycling, because recycling uses too much energy and does not enhance material well enough from a circular perspective, then we move slowly away from these outside circle that we see in the butterfly diagram of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So we avoid recycling and all these activities that requires a lot of fossil fuel into a more repair-based economy, more human-centered, but not human-centered as we are in the center of the economy or the model of life, but we are part of it, and we can be part of this equation, as I always say. So the idea behind what I call the circular human sphere or the human sphere is to look at where abundance is and to enable abundance. So abundance is in biodiversity. It needs to be regenerated. And the next sphere of abundance is the humans. So we need to understand how to optimize human energy as much as we can locally, and obviously still globally, so that we avoid as much as possible the use of other type of energy, i.e. the fossil fuels ones.
Thank you very much for that, Michael. I think it's quite interesting. Without a prompt, we have already received some questions in the chat box coming from LinkedIn. So let me go ahead and, first of all, before I go ahead and start with that, because we have been on the air for a bit, just to let everybody know that we are running a live stream simulcast. We are on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube, and an audio stream coming from Radio Orange 94.0 in Vienna. And we are live, which means we can take telephone calls. So let me go ahead and give you our telephone number. That would be country code 43 for Austria, 1 for Vienna, 319-099-33. I repeat, 319-099-33. So let me go ahead and see. My eyesight is not the best. That's why I had to get the glasses, but it doesn't really help from this distance. Let me see if I could read off some of these questions for you, Alexandre. First one would be coming from Michael Rade. And he asked whether you can describe what the difference is between this idea of the circular economy going back 10 years, as you alluded to in the beginning of your description, in how it was 10 years ago, and how do you see it today, in perhaps maybe the transformation, and how does it look different?
Well, it took already, out of those 10 years, it took already 6 years to understand that circular economy is not an advanced recycling model, because you could end up into different debates and meetings and still hear just about recycling. I'm not against recycling. I'm saying recycling is a great solution today, but it doesn't cope with volumes of waste. Circular economy is not about waste. Everybody talks waste in circular economy, but it's everything but waste. We see unused resources. I know it's difficult to change your wording, your vocabulary, and the way you understand things, but if you talk about unused resources, all of a sudden you see potential everywhere. If you talk about waste management, you are still in linear economy. The best, I would say, would be waste avoidance. Then I would tend to agree. So it took 6 years for the global community to move away from advanced recycling and waste management into what is really circular economy. This is avoiding generating solutions where we forget to use some resources at some stage of the first life cycle, or we forget to design resources so that it can be designed for longevity or for the next life cycle. So it's all of these concepts that obviously it takes time to understand them all, but it took a bit of time for the community to move out of that. And you can see some laws or some circular economy package that have been passed based on waste management, and this is unfortunate. And then the past 3 years have been very interesting because we started to talk about what could really be a service-based economy. We started to unfold the bioeconomy and all these bio-based solutions, which is great. And for the past 6 months, it's like we just discussed with you, Michael, before the show, is about addressing the social dimension and the value. What is a value-based circular economy? So this is great news. And it has accelerated since Build Back Better, post-COVID, first post-COVID period. And
when did that
people
start?
realize...
Sorry, well, hold on. When did that start?
No, but the first...
There is no such thing. Sorry, there I have to correct you. But never mind. That would be too cheeky.
Okay, so things are accelerating towards, do we really want to create something meaningful? Isn't it the opportunity, while we create a new, the foundation of a new economic model, to look beyond that and to say, okay, what are our role and functions in the next economy? I mean, how can we change humans so that we do it even better? We go into the next miles. I know it's complex to understand humans and what will be the humans' behavior in the next economic model, but this is critical because we are a populated species, and if you look at the scale of the Earth, we are nobody. We are insignificant. We are 0.04% of the total mass, but we are the one destroying everything. So if we can be a bit humble about this, if we can look beyond just the economic model, because since we are embedding the ecosystem as part of the decision-making process that we have to do in each and everything, in every design of products that we will have to make, so that they can be accessed as a service or as a platform or as a co-shared concept. And since these designs will have to embed the ecosystem thinking so that we grow the ecosystem, this is the only thing that needs to grow, not the economy, but the ecosystem. Unless we grow the ecosystem to cope with an abundant human population which behaves according to the circular, i.e. the rules of regenerations, the technosphere doesn't have to grow and cannot grow anyway because of entropy and all these limits. But if we manage to perceive the abundance. Where is the abundance? And everything, it's all about molecules and atoms, and the CO2 is fine, but it's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So it's just a matter of redesigning everything, so we put everything back into the right balance. So if we understand that, there are plenty of things to do, but the innovations today are still not in circular economy, I mean, are still not disruptive enough. We need to change the mindset of the way we access things, and we are no user and consumer. We are beings with full of values, different values, full of empathy, full of energy, full of resources, not as a utilitarian tools for the next capital economy, but full of resources for the ecosystem. So we feed the ecosystem. We are also abundant nutrients, and we are also nutrients as part of the entire ecosystem. So we need to move away from the economy only, and we need to understand the distance to model. How do we measure the distance to a full circular planet? I mean, how can we? How long is it? How far is it to a full circular planetary system? How do we reach a circularity state at the systemic level? And how far is it from 2020? And what are the milestones to reach out to full system circularity? And to reach to full system circularity, it's all about understanding the ecosystem. So through biomimicry, permaculture, it's about a perma-circular economy that we need to build, and how humans are going to deeply adapt and evolve so that we reach that system circularity. And the technical nutrients are just part of it, but they are not the priority. The priority is to preserve the abundance of the ecosystem and see the abundance of humanity as a positive news.
There is a question that came through that is a great segue to that of what you just said, Alexandre. This is coming from Stefan Peters, and he says, nature and humans distinguish in a way of ecosystem design that nature fully reuses its entropies, as you mentioned, while mankind leaves its anthropogenic generated entropy to nature to deal with. I think that's pretty much piggybacking on what you said. Circular economy could address this, but for effectiveness, we must address the big consumption items and not just the tokenism. So I keep missing any discussions on carbon circularity. And when I say carbon, I mean the element C and not the molecule CO2. Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's a very it's a too detailed and precise question. I'm not a CEO of the CO2 expert, and I wouldn't. I mean, the topic of today is how the humans can play a role and can see themselves as addressing some regenerative functions into the next economy. I wish I could answer this type of question, but I don't think I'm the right expert to address that the C cycle in the next.
Okay, well then, thank you very much for that honest answer. Most people would come up with some sort of answer, and I'm afraid I have to move the computer back to me. This is coming from Ashan Khan, and he asked, "How far does circular economy and sustainability go together? If yes, then thinking about doing less, meaning will lead to joblessness yes, thinking about doing less mining will lead to joblessness of miners. How can one tackle this issue?"
Okay, thanks for the great question, Kumar. Well, sustainability has been the topic so far, and it will remain the topic because it's a very generic term. And the thing is that when something is sustainable, you are not thriving. So sustainability is great to keep the system afloat and to to talk about resilience and effectiveness and efficiency, but what's missing in the early days notion of sustainability was the sense of regenerative cycles, which we have in circular economy. In circular economy, what's new, you can include that into your sustainability terms, but what's new is that we look at nature, and we like the tree is the best example of is our most circular element that we have. I mean, at least it's a symbolic one, because it works. It has different functions from the tips to toes, and all the 90% of the branches are not meant for the survival of the tree, but to generate energy for the rest of the ecosystem, to feed the soils, and to protect the insect and the birds in the tree, and to then feed the soil with energy, with leaves, and you name it. So the fauna and flora around. So it's from that model we understand that we need to feed the ecosystem. So how businesses will understand collaboration, and we understand that preserving the ecosystem is the right way to preserve the future of business, and to first preserve life within that ecosystem, the same way the tree is doing. And then the second thing is that if you preserve life around the ecosystem, lively activities as well, you will preserve the future of business. And then the second thing that we learn from the tree is that competition, direct competition, uses too much energy. So it's better to collaborate and to share energy with others than going into full competition. So meaning if you sell a mobile phone and 100 competitors sell the same mobile phone, you will be in direct competition. If you share the component of the different mobile phones, and if on top of that you see your mobile phone as being a source of energy for other things in other sectors of the economy, then all of a sudden you are not competing against anyone anymore, because you have your own way of seeing the mobile phone within an ecosystem of services. To answer the second part of the question is that in mining, well, you have to go gradually from the butterfly diagram and understand how miners, the role of miners in an extractive-based economy. So they have to dig to look for minerals and all types of metals to feed the economy. But miners in an economy which is reusing those minerals and metals become the experts of materials, the export of the matter. So the miners will have to find a role into preserving the properties of the minerals and metals, so that they circulate the longest way possible within the economy. So obviously you are not going to move all the miners into an economy which is preserving the properties of those minerals and metals, but at least part of them could be considered as matter experts, while you are training the others into recycling, into remanufacturing, into preserving those parts, so that they feed again the factories of tomorrow. I would say the remanufacture of tomorrow, because it's no longer about building factories, but building remanufacture. So input and output. Your minerals needs to enter the factory so that you build the parts for the next economy, but they also need to welcome back those components, those parts, so that the miners maintain the properties, and then these parts can be reused again. So it's a long process. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy process, but in a repair-based economy, in an economy that cares for everything, there's far more job creation potential than in an incineration or recycling-based economy. I mean, there are numbers that are known here, but per 10,000 tons of goods, you create far more jobs in a repair-based, service-based economy than in an economy of incineration or an economy of waste. And I understand the worry of Kumar, but it's about, in fact, what I'm suggesting, what I've suggested in one of the articles is to make sure that we create some pathways through the recycling loop into the remanufacturing loop, into the redistribution loop, into the repair loop of the butterfly diagram, so that we migrate slowly the economy towards more repair-based jobs and move away from fossil fuel and extractive activities. And therefore, we need to train people, and we need to keep the knowledge of miners who are the experts of matter, and these are key jobs for tomorrow's economy in a preserve-based economy.
Thank you for that. As a point of explanation, for those of you who are not familiar with the model that Alexandre has been referring to, the butterfly model, it's coming primarily from the MacArthur Foundation, Ellen MacArthur Foundation. It's based upon two different cycles, one being material and the other one being biological. And we concentrate primarily on the material or the technical elements. And those were the points that Alexandre was referring to. And the biggest problem is that we keep dealing with things that we really can't manage properly, that weren't built to go back into a system. And so we try to do the best we can. And Alexandre was alluding to the emphasis that we've had on recycling. And I remember when I first came here to Austria, I was completely amazed on what all was being recycled. And we were all so happy, and we all felt so ecological in that we were doing our part to save the environment. But in essence, it was not necessarily an illusion, but we weren't really tackling the problem per se. I'd like to go ahead and give a heads up for everybody who perhaps might just join this program. You are listening to Radio Tipping Point. My name is Mike Boyle, and I have Alexandre Lemille as a special guest for the show. We are taking telephone calls. In case you are listening and would like to go ahead and pose a question, our telephone number is country code 43 for Austria, 1 for Vienna, 319-099-33. I repeat, 01 for Vienna, 319-099-33. And we have a number of questions, Alexandre, coming in from the chat box. So let me go ahead and read off some of them to you. The first one is coming from Anna Kuhl. And she says, and I'm afraid I have to move this a little bit closer. Hi, Alex. How could we accelerate the circular economy through education? Where could we start to address the wider public, thinking early stage, primary school, etc.? Your thoughts?
Thanks, Anna. This is a critical question. In fact, circular economy is an economy where you preserve the quality of stocks. So often we talk about the stocks of metals and minerals and parts, but in fact the most important stock in circular economy, and we often miss about it, is the knowledge, the stock of knowledge. So the stock of knowledge, the stock of skills, the stock of ability for the people of a specific country or region to preserve that knowledge. I give you an example. I mean, in Japan, there was a tradition. It's kind of disappearing, but I hope they will maintain it with circular economy, to dismantle and rebuild temples. Not because the temples were the ancient temples were in a bad shape, but just to not forget to rebuild temples. I think in France, where I come from, we could have learned a lot from it to rebuild Notre Dame, because now we are in trouble to rebuild the cathedral. So just to go back to your question, I mean, in primary and in the primary levels of schools, this is critical to change the mindset of people, because obviously, if the kids learn from their parents who have grown up in a fossil fuel based linear model, they will continue thinking the same way as they've been thinking through generations. So we definitely need to break that cycle and to start thinking from a regenerative and redesign perspective, the main principles of the circular economy, and how we humans are not just the only species on the planet, but one among others, and how to preserve the future generation by thinking in our decision-making process. And this is what's behind the principle of deep empathy, is how through my decision-making process, how I am going to preserve future generations to live, and not to live until 2100 like we often see, but to live forever. How the children of my children will have a good life. And this is the only way to think about the future, not as we hear every day on the news. And the education is so critical at the primary level. I agree. They need to go out. Because these generations tends to play all day long on games, and games could be a solution to use the brains to find solutions, global solutions to global challenges. But education needs a reshuffle, and we need to have the teachers as enabler of the discussion on how the children would see their world, and not listen to the adults, but to let the children create the world they want to design, and through the understanding of how the ecosystem functions and role of the ecosystem work. And this is critical. And then later on, it should be diffused in each and every topics, in biology, in physics, in mathematics, in science, in every single topic. We need to diffuse design thinking, circular economic principle, nature regeneration systems, and all these topics that are highly critical for. With only one single vision and one single objective, is how do we preserve conditions conducive to life of species, all species, including human species. So that's a definite yes, and this is the first stock, which is the most critical, the stock of knowledge for one country, one region, you name it.
Well, alluding to the youth not necessarily waiting for us to come up with a proper example, I could think of a young Swedish woman, I believe she's 17 years old, who did a very good job of actually showing that to us not too long ago. But I have a piggyback question on that of what Anna asked, and it was tied to this idea that something I've noticed through time, that our ability to manage anything other than short-term thinking has become extremely difficult due to various elements, in my opinion, one being our appreciation of time, or our relationship to time, the importance of short-term. In other words, societally, we have primarily, I would almost say exclusively, this idea of everything has to be short-term. We're talking about immediate results. It's basically not only our economy, but how we treat each other right now. So with that of what you were referring to, Alexandre, we're talking about changing that to a medium or a long-term thinking. And I agree wholeheartedly, but I see this as being a huge challenge because of our conditioning, the conditioning that we've been going through. And I'm thinking primarily since the last 20 years, but that grows exponentially. The quickness, the lack of patience. So how do we overcome that?
Well, I think COVID helped us somehow, because you see a lot of people trying to reconnect with what's important in life. And what's very insightful on that topic is it's coming from the ancestral tribes, the Aboriginous people of this planet, that are the only one who have been adapting to a very very dangerous surrounding, be it in North America, South America, Australia, and even in Europe or Africa. These ancestral tribes have had all kinds of threats, and they have managed to evolve by preserving their belief system through their ancestors. So they would, in each decision-making process, they ask their ancestors what would be their view based on the decision they are about to make. And they ask as if the next generation, which is unborn, would agree. So if I take this decision, would the future generation agree on that decision that will be to preserve their rights, to preserve their life, great conditions to life? And this is written in the Iroquois constitution. This is the decentration or decentering oneself. So it's away from what you described, Michael, the individualistic, very, I am one, and nobody can have a say on my rights, as we see in your country. Instead of saying, I am one part of an entire system, I agree that I'm an individual, but I belong to a community, and different communities according to the time of the day. This morning I can belong to your community through your radio community. In half an hour I will belong to my family community, and later on to my business community, and tonight to the city community. So whatever community you are connected with, and they manage to take decision not for themselves but for the rest of the species and the generation. So every critical decision I make in my lifetime is not about maximizing everything I can do during life and death, as we do in Western economies, like from birth to death, I'm gonna visit all the countries in the world, do all kinds of sports, and maximize everything. No, it's not just about that. It's like, no, I'm part of a chain of a life system from my ancestors to many future generations. It's the 7-generation model. And every key decision I will take is to preserve at least the next 3 generations, and so on and so forth. And I will teach my children and grandchildren how to do that. And this has been proven for the Iroquois, the Lakotas of North America, just to give some example. That has been working because they've been surviving, although in the bad shape and bad condition, but they have managed to preserve their traditions, and they have managed to preserve their people. So that's a very good learning, that to look at the Aboriginal, the knowledge that they have based on empathy, based on decentering oneself.
I would agree that we have plenty of examples of those groups that are getting it right. I think the real question is, and you alluded to hedonism, that's what I would call the bucket list and the like, where it's all about me. And I think that it's easy to go ahead and come up with examples, but how do we go ahead and change how people go ahead and consider what's to be valuable? I agree with you with COVID-19 that people were starting to think about it, but at the same time, there was a phrase that you used. I never heard it before, but I think it's really great. It was something like consumption rebound. That wasn't quite it, but there was a phrase you used that really described a situation that I think that we have had here locally. Once the shops opened and people had this compelling need to be part of that machinery for a number of reasons. One is the one that they knew, and perhaps the model that you referred to tied to the Native Americans is not quite familiar. They maybe wouldn't feel empowered. But that transformation, how do we kick off that transformation?
Well, just on to answer the consumption rebound. Consumption rebound is the single issue of circular economy. Circular economy addresses many challenges. But if I don't need to buy something which is costly in a linear economy and just can access it in a circular economy, then I have plenty of savings. What do I do with that savings? So unless you change our mindset, there's nobody to stop you from being in front of your shop shelf and buy the stuff that you don't need. So unless you change, and this is a long-term process, but this is where we need to go. And to do that, we need to change the value systems, and there are plenty of things happening there. It's we are moving into slowly but surely into a currency constellation system, a money constellation system, where I mean through cryptocurrency, like for instance holochain, but other local currency, city-based currency, value-based currency, value-based holochain systems, where holochains you will be responsible for your entire chain. It's not like blockchain where it's shared. So it's a fully decentralized and fully based on your belief system. So if you believe that empathy is critical in your life time, you will invest into empathy-based cryptocurrencies, and you will share empathy-based cryptocurrency with the other people who believe in that. If you believe that the veganism movement is the right movement, you will be part of that movement, and that movement will grow if humanity wants that movement to grow, or if the terrorism is better to invest in. I don't know, but humans will be able to have a portfolio of different types of value system, value currencies, vouchers, rewarding system, reciprocity, and so on. So that's very interesting because it's highly flexible. It's not based on the centralized system as we know it today, and this will move together with the development of circular economy, and without such a system of exchange, a new system of exchange which allow freedom, everyone's freedom away from a financial system which is based on the monopoly game, where there are only few winners and the majority of losers, like the famous 1%. And this is based on the monopoly. Yeah? It's once you win, you have all the properties and all the houses and the buildings of the game, and nobody else is able to pay. So unless you finance them, you are alone to play with the monopoly game. So it's the final death model, and it doesn't work. Our economy is that model. So if you create a circular economy on that system, on the rare currency model, then the circular economy will fail because it's not recognizing the different values that you create every day when you wake up. If you wake up and if you believe that you are only there to make money, then you better continue to sleep because it's not the point. So you wake up, but you create all kinds of different values during the day, and unless the value-based system and the belief system changes, circular economy will not reach the ultimate goal of growing the ecosystem while preserving a system of exchange between human beings. So we need, in circular economy, we need to look at the macro level, at the meso level, and the micro level. The micro level is what's happening now, business models in circular economy, but we forget about the meso vision and the macro vision. So the distance to full system circularity. This is what we need to reach. And if you don't embed human into the equation, you are missing one of the most abundant sphere on the planet, full of energy, full of resources to preserve nature, and full of empathy. And unless you focus on an empathy-based model, decentering yourself, there's nothing to refrain someone from buying that car or from buying that toy in front of the shelf, because humans are meant to acquire things and to accumulate things. So unless you change, like Anna's questions, in the primary level, saying this, you are not here to accumulate things, and success, this is the definition of success. Success is not about acquiring things, and at the end of your life, you have so many houses and flats, and everybody is so full of money. And no, it's not about that. It's about succeeding in preserving the life systems as part of the chain of your ancestors into the next generations. And unless you understand that, you can have as much money. There is this famous Donald Trump comics where he shows his son and his daughter, sorry, because I don't think he has a son, but oh, look, this is everything that I own. And you see a sea of oil and catastrophes and CO2. And so what's the point? I mean, you can have as much money as you want, but if there is no living systems preserved, it doesn't work. So humanity needs to change from starting with you.
I agree. Thank you for that. I just would like to go ahead and remind, I see the clock behind me, that we don't have too much time. But for those of you who just kind of stumbled, either listening to Radio Orange or perhaps on LinkedIn Live, or maybe even on YouTube, I just wanted to let you know you are participating in Radio Tipping Point. My name is Mike Boyle, and I have Alexandre Lemille for the next 6 minutes and 9 seconds, according to the clock behind me. And there are a number of questions still in the chat box. I'm afraid what we can try to do after the show is maybe go through some of the components, but I want to make sure that everybody who did make a posting had a chance to go on the air. And there's a comment coming from Boyan Dragic. And he says, hello, what are the inputs that needed to be used to make circulation possible? And how do those inputs affect the price and the ecosystem? Very short question. Easy to explain, right?
Well, the one way to answer that question, I mean, that question needs some time to be answered. But one way is that let's stick to the design. In fact, every input needs to be entering the cycle and stay within the cycle. So everything from now on that enters the cycle, you need to decide what's going to be like as part of your design thinking model, where it's a bit like the industrial symbiosis model, where flows of heat goes from one factory to another, flows of unused resources goes to one factory to another. So how are you going to think about your input as subparts of an entire ecosystems of services? And how are they going to stay the longest way possible within that system? So everything that enters needs to cycle longer, need to be thought at the design level. Design has a positive impact on the durability of the life of any nutriment entering into the cycle. And design has an impact of 80%. So it decides on what's happening with that nutriment and that input into the cycle to stay within it and to be transformed and to evolve within it. So you need to think about that at the design level. And let me give you, an example from Gunther Pauli that I often use. Sorry for those who are not into that, but in the beer activity, you need grains and you need water and you need all kinds of nutriment and inputs to create your beer. But if you are in a linear economy, you sell beer in front of the next competitor selling beer. So you have products in a competition. In circular thinking, the spent grain enters into, becomes resources for the pig farm, or becomes resources for, if you add another input, you can grow mushrooms. From the pig farm, you can provide gas or effluent to create gas from methanization. You can also collect waste from the city next door to create gas. From the gas, you can create an aquaculture basin to grow fish or to create algae as an alternative to plastic. Then you can have an aquaculture pond with fish, and then once the pond is clean, you have clean water again. So you are no longer selling beer in front of the next competitor, but you are part of a full ecosystem of services and effluent and resources, use and unused. So all of a sudden you are tied into a mushroom business, algae business, methanization business, and you are no longer just one product into the economy. So this is how you need to think about designing these inputs entering the circular economy. Another example would be the cotton in the textile industry. Instead of being into the textile industry selling urban clothes or fashion clothes, just for a couple of months before selling the next type of clothes in a fast fashion model, you manages the cycle of the cotton throughout the entire life cycle management system. So i.e. the next 30 years from fashion, high trendy textile, urban textile, protective clothes, insulation clothes, carpets, you name it. And the cotton is being managed as a service it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's a different way to see the economy and to see inputs entering into the cycle. So the cotton, you control the life of the cotton throughout the next 30 years or 50 years of life within the economy before it re-enters safely back into the ecosystem. So these are the different ways to see inputs entering into the cycle.
Okay, we've reached the last 30 seconds of the show. Let's see it up here. So Alexandre, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And what we'll do is we'll stay with the video live stream a little bit longer. I'd like to thank all the listeners of Radio Orange, all those listeners of Radio Tipping Point, and I will be back next week. Same time, same station, and our subject will be empowerment. So you're empowered. What do you do after that? Thanks again all for listening, and look forward to getting together with you next week. Bye.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody.
And that was the end of our show, but we are still on a live stream. And so what I'd like to do is make it a little bit easier for myself. Kill that. And read some of the other questions. I tend to think, Alexandre, you cannot see them. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Then,
okay. Now I see them. Okay.
Oh, you see them. Okay, great. I see that Michael wrote a few questions. Now, I don't know to what degree they were answered. Anna asked another question as well. So I just want to make sure that we address all of the questions. You might want to go ahead and follow up with starting with Michael in the last one. The true cycle would work only in case waste industry does not interrupt it. And I understand Michel's point. I've had Michel on the show, and he believes that the waste industry is not interested in real circularity because they are one of the biggest money makers out there.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make, is to say, leave the waste experts doing what they do, because we still need them, and linearity of systems will still be there for a couple of decades. But focus on those who want to change the systems. Focus on those who are fully into the circularity of systems and who wants to enhance material, starting with design. If at the design stage, design something which can be reused, then my Fairphone here. Sorry,
We're starting to lose screen.
Yeah, the children are getting connected to the Wi-Fi.
They're taking your wireless. Okay.
So if I buy a Fairphone in the next economy, then there's not going to be any waste left for the waste managers, and therefore they will evolve. So do not focus on these actors. They are needed now, but they are needed until the linearity of systems continue. Focus on design and on the inner cycle of the butterfly diagram. I understand that everybody wants to keep their waste because unless you create waste, you don't have business. That's why I say recycling is linear, it's not circular. And to me, I'm not saying it's a mistake to have put it in the circular diagram, but it doesn't help the discussion. I understand the link, but it doesn't help with the discussion in circularity. It's like, how do we create an economy with no waste?
I'd like to go one step further. What if we started a movement and the objective is to ban the word waste in our lifetime? I think
in my training, in my training, the people
by nature is bad. So let's get rid of it.
No, but in the training and workshops I do, I ask people to pay me 10 cents every time they say waste. So I am richer now.
That's great. Anna asked another question. I want to make sure that we go through all the questions and then we'll go ahead and close it up. Following the cooperation part, how can we organize the transition from the competition mindset to the open mindset? And we kind of alluded to that earlier. Now, people often talk about openness, but in the end, it's quite a protective environment. Yes, it's all about transparency is another word we could have used here. I experienced this as a major challenge when moving towards a circular economy. Yes, I agree with her again. How can we get more open and cooperative mindsets? I think the economy question was an easier one than this one.
No, but Anna, I understand Anna from her question on education. I mean, in circular mindset, we look at a challenge and we try to address a challenge. I'm doing that in my daily work right now. These are industries coming together to address one specific challenge in a pre-competitive phase. So this is how, I mean, you can think of the sports brand or the factories. Some of the factories, I used to live in South Africa and in Cape Town, some of the factories had to shut down on the 25th of each month because there was no water anymore. The quota of water ran out. So unless you sit with every industry nearby, using the same sources of water and say, guys, can we talk? Guys and girls, sorry, we need to be more equitable. So can we talk and can we address the issue of water together? Since the challenges are systemic, you will have cooperative mindsets developing as we go along. Obviously, as always with human nature, it's going to be a forced cooperation because we've been discussing that for many years and nobody is moving into the collaboration in a natural manner. Obviously, there are plenty of collaborative examples, but I'm talking about at the scale of the global economy. So it will be forced, like we enter forcefully into COVID. But it will help change the mindset. And it's about addressing the issue of water, the issue of the food, the crop yield, not reaching the expectation because of climate change. I mean, you name it. So collaboration will occur as we address the bigger challenge, and all the challenges that we face are bigger than the big brands that you can think of. Even the GAFA will not be able to address systemic challenge on their own. So everybody will be forced to sit around the table and to collaborate. So I'm just giving you the bigger picture answer, but it's also true for at the local level. And the challenges are so big that not one single entity, community, company, country is able to address it on its own.